My name is David Harrington, and I engineer safety systems on offshore oil platforms. Not the kind of work where you get second chances. One mistake, and an entire rig goes up in flames with everyone on it. I've spent 15 years making sure that doesn't happen, working my way up from a roughneck to senior systems engineer. My mind is trained to identify problems before they become catastrophes, to think 3 steps ahead, and to never, ever panic when things go sideways. My wife, Laura, never really understood what I did. Something with pipes and pressure valves, she'd tell her friends with a dismissive wave, as if I fixed toilets for a living. Laura was an art dealer, specializing in emerging avant-garde artists. She runs a small but prestigious gallery in the Arts District downtown. We met at a charity function 7 years ago. I was there because my company sponsored it. She was there because it was the right crowd to be seen with. The night we met, she wore a black dress that seemed simple until you noticed the intricate beadwork that caught the light when she moved. That was Laura in a nutshell, layers of complexity beneath a polished surface. She had this way of tilting her head when she laughed that made her honey blonde hair cascade over one shoulder. I watched her work the room for an hour before I got the courage to talk to her. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," she said, appearing beside me at the bar. "That obvious, huh?" Only to someone who feels the same way. We were married 8 months later. For the first few years it worked. I was on a 28-28 rotation, 28 days on the rig, 28 days at home. When I was home, we traveled. Paris, Barcelona, New York. Wherever there was an art scene she wanted to explore. I didn't care where we went as long as we were together. She'd drag me to galleries and explain the significance of splattered paint on canvas with such passion that I'd almost believe it was worth the 6-figure price tag. Then things changed. Laura's career took off after she discovered some kid from Detroit who painted urban decay scenes on car doors. Suddenly, she was getting write-ups in art magazines, invitations to exclusive showings, and her phone never stopped buzzing with messages from collectors and artists. Meanwhile, my company was developing a new safety system, and I was leading the project. My 28-28 schedule became more like 40-16. When I was home, I was exhausted, and Laura was always busy with some gallery event or flying off to meet with an artist. "We hardly see each other anymore," she said one night, as I was packing for another 6-week stint on the platform. "When was the last time we had a real conversation?" "I'm doing important work, Laura. People's lives depend on getting this system right." She sighed, that little exhale that said I'd missed the point entirely. "Your work is always more important than us." "That's not fair. My work is what pays for this house, your gallery, the trips." "I don't need your money, David. The gallery is doing fine. What I need is a husband who's actually present." We'd had this argument before. It always ended the same way, with both of us frustrated and nothing resolved. This time, though, Laura had a new twist. "I think we need some space," she said, her voice suddenly calm. "A trial separation." The wrench I was holding clattered to the floor. "Separation? What are you talking about?" "Not a divorce, just space. 2 weeks. To figure out what we really want." My stomach dropped. "You've been thinking about this?" "Yes," she admitted, "for a while now." "And what exactly are the rules of this space?" I asked, my engineer's mind already trying to define parameters, to understand the system I was suddenly operating in. She shrugged. "No rules, that's the point. Complete freedom to remember who we are outside of this marriage." Warning bells were going off in my head. Complete freedom? That sounded like permission to cheat without consequences. But Laura was looking at me with such earnestness, like this was some kind of growth opportunity rather than the prelude to our marriage's funeral. "This isn't normal, Laura. People who love each other don't need space to figure it out." "That's exactly the problem," she said, crossing her arms. "You think in such black and white terms. Everything has to fit into your systems and protocols. Life isn't an oil rig, David. Sometimes you need to break patterns to see things clearly." I wanted to argue, to point out the million logical flaws in her plan, but I could see from the set of her jaw that her mind was made up. Laura had already emotionally checked out, and fighting would only push her further away. So I did what I've trained myself to do in crisis situations. I assessed the variables I could control. 2 weeks, I said finally, and then we talk. Really talk. Relief flooded her face. Thank you for understanding. I didn't understand, not at all, but I nodded like I did. I'll stay at the condo downtown, she said, already pulling a suitcase from our closet. It'll be good to be closer to the gallery. The condo. Of course, we'd bought it as an investment property 3 years ago, but Laura had been using it more and more as a crash pad when she worked late. I joked once that it was her secret bachelor pad. She hadn't found it funny. When does this separation clock start? I asked. Now, I guess, I've already packed some things. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Already packed. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. This wasn't a spontaneous suggestion. She'd been planning this, probably for weeks. Maybe there was already someone else. Laura, is there? Don't, she cut me off. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be. It's just 2 weeks to clear our heads. I watched her pack with mechanical efficiency, selecting clothes with the same care she used when curating an exhibition. Designer labels, color coordinated, each piece with a purpose. Nothing random, nothing left to chance. In 20 minutes, she had everything she needed to start her new temporary life without me. At the door, she hesitated. This is going to be good for us, David. You'll see. Then she was gone, the scent of her perfume lingering in the air. I stood there trying to process what had just happened, my mind running diagnostics, searching for the failure point in our relationship. I didn't sleep that night. I paced our too-big house, feeling like an intruder in what should have been my own space. Every room held memories of Laura, her books on the shelves, her favorite mug in the kitchen. The throw pillows she'd insisted matched the couch perfectly. I ended up in my home office, staring at the calendar on my wall. I was supposed to fly out to the platform in 3 days for a 2-week stint. Perfect timing. I'd be gone for the exact duration of our separation. But the more I thought about it, the more wrong it felt. If Laura wanted space to figure out what she wanted, then I deserved the same. I called my boss at 5 a.m. Jack, I need to take 2 weeks of personal leave. Jesus, David, do you know what time it is? Sorry, family emergency. There was a pause on the line. Everything okay? No, I said honestly, but I need to handle it. Jack sighed. The system tests. Miller can run them. He knows the protocols as well as I do. Another pause. In 15 years, I'd never asked for unexpected time off. Not when my father died, not when I caught pneumonia and could barely stand. Okay, Jack said finally. 2 weeks, but I expect you back at full capacity after that. Thanks, Jack. I hung up and sat back in my chair, suddenly at a loss. What the hell was I going to do for 2 weeks? Monitor my wife's activities like some pathetic, suspicious husband? That wasn't me. I'd always trusted Laura, but then again, I'd never thought she'd suggest a separation either. I decided to give her the space she wanted. No calls, no texts, no checking up. If this was a test, I had passed it by respecting her wishes. Meanwhile, I'd focus on myself, hit the gym I'd been neglecting, catch up with friends I rarely saw, maybe even visit my brother in Seattle. That resolution lasted exactly 26 hours. I was at the gym when my phone buzzed with a social media notification. I rarely checked any of it, but Laura had insisted I create accounts to stay connected. The notification was a tag. Laura had posted something and tagged me in it. Curious and a little hopeful, maybe she was missing me already, I opened the app. The hope died instantly. There was Laura, radiant in a red dress I'd never seen before, standing next to a tall, dark-haired man at what looked like an art exhibition. His arm was around her waist, fingers splayed possessively on her hip. They were both laughing at something off camera, caught in a moment of shared joy. The caption read, "Opening night success with the brilliant Marcus Reed. Art truly does imitate life's most passionate moments. Hashtag new beginnings, hashtag creative connection. Marcus Reed." The name hit me like a physical blow. Laura had mentioned him dozens of times over the past few months, an up-and-coming abstract expressionist whose work she'd been championing. He has such vision, David, such raw emotion in his brushstrokes. I'd nodded and pretended to care, never imagining he'd be brushing strokes across my marriage. The hashtags felt like deliberate daggers, new beginnings, creative connection. She might as well have written, "Sorry, David, I've upgraded to a more compatible model." I scrolled through the comments, each one a fresh cut. "You two look amazing together." "The art world's new power couple." "Marcus's best work yet, and the perfect curator to showcase it." "Meant to be." And Laura's responses, full of heart emojis and gratitude. Not a single mention that she was married. That this separation was supposedly about finding ourselves, not finding someone else. Day 2, it had taken her just 2 days to publicly flaunt whatever was happening with Marcus Reed. I closed the app and sat on the weight bench, my workout forgotten. The gym faded around me as my mind shifted into the same analytical mode I used when facing a potential catastrophe on the rig. Assess the situation, identify variables, determine the optimal response. Fact: Laura had suggested a separation with no rules. Fact: within 48 hours, she was publicly displaying a relationship with another man. Fact: she had tagged me deliberately, ensuring I would see it. Conclusion: this wasn't about saving our marriage. This was about Laura transitioning to her next relationship while keeping me as a safety net. The pain was sharp and immediate, but beneath it was something unexpected. Clarity. For years, I'd been accommodating Laura's world, trying to fit myself into spaces that were never designed for someone like me. I'd nodded at incomprehensible art, made small talk with people who looked through me, apologized for my work schedule while she built her career on my financial foundation. The more I thought about it, the more pieces fell into place. The increasing time at the condo, the constant texts she'd hide from me, the sudden interest in abstract expressionism when she'd previously dismissed it as overdone. I left the gym without finishing my workout and drove home, my mind racing with questions and calculations. When I walked through the front door, the house felt different. Not empty, but clarified, as if Laura's deception had been fogging my vision, and now I could see everything sharply. I went straight to our home office and opened the filing cabinet where we kept important documents. Laura had always insisted on managing our finances. "You're too busy with your rig stuff, darling, and I have a head for these things." I trusted her completely, signing whatever she put in front of me, depositing my substantial salary into our joint accounts. Now I pulled out everything: bank statements, investment portfolios, tax returns. I spread them across my desk and began to go through them methodically. 3 hours later, I sat back, stunned. What I found was a carefully constructed scheme. Laura had been using our accounts to fund her gallery in ways that went far beyond normal business operations. There were questionable transfers, suspicious patterns, and most alarmingly, documents with my signature that I had no memory of signing. The gallery wasn't just her passion project. It was the center of what looked like financial fraud, with me as the unwitting accomplice. The engineer in me appreciated the elegance of her system. The husband in me was devastated by the betrayal. But overriding both was a cold, calculating anger that focused my thoughts with laser precision. Laura had started a game she thought she controlled. She'd set the rules, chosen the playing field, and expected me to fumble along, reacting exactly as she predicted. Hurt, confused, eventually begging her to reconsider, to come back to poor, boring, predictable David. But she'd made a critical miscalculation. She'd assumed I would play defense, when my whole career had trained me to identify system vulnerabilities and neutralize them before they could cause damage. If Laura wanted to end our marriage, fine, but she wouldn't use me as her safety net while she test drove a new model, and she certainly wouldn't leave me holding the bag for her financial manipulations. I pulled out my phone and called a number I'd never thought I'd need. "Stanley Weiss's office," a crisp voice answered. "This is David Harrington. I need to speak with Mr. Weiss as soon as possible." "Mr. Weiss is very busy. Can I ask what this is regarding?" "Tell him it's about Laura Harrington's gallery and potential tax irregularities. I'm her husband, and I've found some concerning documentation." There was a pause. "Hold, please." 30 seconds later, Stanley Weiss, one of the top divorce attorneys in the city, was on the line. Mr. Harrington, I understand you have concerns about your wife's business practices? Yes, and I need protection, both legally and financially. How soon can we meet? I have an opening at 7 a.m. tomorrow. I'll be there. I hung up and immediately made another call, this time to a forensic accountant whose firm specialized in art market transactions. They couldn't see me until the following afternoon, but that was fine. I had time. 2 weeks to be exact. That night I slept better than I had in months. There's a strange peace that comes with clarity, even when that clarity reveals ugly truths. I no longer had to wonder what was wrong with our marriage or how to fix it. The problem wasn't fixable because it wasn't a communication issue or growing apart. It was that I'd married someone who saw me as a utility, not a partner. The next morning, I met with Stanley Weiss in his corner office overlooking the city. He was a small man with sharp eyes that missed nothing, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. So, he said after I'd signed his retainer agreement, "Tell me everything." And I did. I laid out the evidence I'd gathered, the patterns I'd noticed, the timeline of Laura's behavior. I showed him bank statements, tax documents, gallery records I'd accessed through our home network. Weiss listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. When I finished, he removed his glasses and polished them thoughtfully. "Mr. Harrington, what exactly is your goal here?" "I want out," I said simply. "Clean break, fair division of legitimate assets. But I won't be implicated in whatever she's been doing with the gallery finances. And if getting out clean means losing a significant portion of your marital assets?" I didn't hesitate. "I earn enough to start over. Peace of mind is worth more than money." Weiss nodded approvingly. "Good answer. Now, based on what you've shown me, we have several options." He outlined a strategy that was both aggressive and elegant. We would document everything, quietly move my personal earnings to secured accounts she couldn't access, and prepare divorce filings that included evidence of her financial improprieties. Not to expose her publicly, but to ensure she wouldn't fight the divorce terms. The key, Weiss explained, is leverage. We won't threaten to report her activities, but she'll understand that fighting you would be unwise. What about the art purchases made in my name? That's where it gets complicated. You'll need to disassociate yourself from those transactions, which might mean some financial loss. But the alternative could be liability for tax fraud. I nodded. "Do what you need to do." "One more thing," Weiss said, leaning forward. "No contact with your wife until we have everything in place. No arguments, no confrontations, no emotional outbursts. Can you manage that?" "Absolutely," I assured him. "I've spent my career preventing explosions, not causing them." As I left Weiss's office, my phone buzzed with another notification. Laura had posted again, this time a close-up of her and Marcus, champagne glasses clinking. When inspiration meets passion, magic happens. #Midnight Muse, #the artist and his muse. The rage that surged through me was so intense I had to stop walking and lean against a wall. She wasn't even trying to be subtle anymore. This wasn't just moving on. This was deliberately rubbing salt in the wound. I wanted to call her, to demand answers, to ask how she could throw away 7 years like they meant nothing. Instead, I took a deep breath and channeled that rage into focus. I opened my phone and took screenshots of every post, every comment, every public interaction between Laura and Marcus I could find. Documentation was going to be key. The next 10 days were a blur of meetings with financial experts, documentation gathering, and strategic planning. I stayed at a hotel under a different name, Paying Cash. I went completely dark on social media after first downloading everything Laura had posted. More photos with Marcus, gallery events, champagne toasts, all tagged with increasingly blatant hints about their relationship. Meanwhile, Weiss and his team were building a case that was both airtight and devastating. The forensic accountant uncovered a pattern of financial manipulation going back nearly 3 years, coinciding almost exactly with when Laura's gallery started representing Marcus Reed. What emerged was a sophisticated scheme. Laura and Marcus weren't just having an affair, they were partners in an elaborate fraud. The gallery was laundering money through inflated art sales, fake purchases, and offshore accounts. And I had unknowingly provided both the financial backing and the respectable front they needed. But there was one detail that hit me harder than anything else. 3 months ago, Laura had begun the process of transferring ownership of our house, into a trust that would have effectively removed it from our marital assets. The paperwork had my signature on it, but I had never seen it, much less signed it. She had forged my name, planning to strip me of my home while I was working offshore. When I saw that document, something inside me changed. This wasn't just betrayal, this was calculated predation. She hadn't just fallen for someone else. She had been systematically preparing to clean me out. On day 7 of our separation, I received a text from Laura. "How are you? Haven't heard from you." The casual tone after everything she'd been broadcasting publicly made my blood boil. I showed the message to Weiss, who advised me to maintain radio silence. "She's testing the waters," he said, "seeing if you are still in the safety net position." I didn't respond, but I did ask Weiss to expedite our timeline. I wanted everything in place before the 2 weeks were up. Through our investigation, we discovered something that changed everything. Laura and Marcus weren't working alone. The mastermind behind their operation was someone known only as T in their communications, a shadowy figure who provided the financial expertise and connections that made their scheme possible. T turned out to be Tessa Blackwood, heir to a banking fortune with rumored ties to various financial scandals across Europe and Asia. She had been using Laura's gallery and Marcus's art as vehicles for moving money through the system, taking a substantial cut in the process. By day 12 of our separation, 2 days before we were supposed to reunite and talk about our future, I was ready. That morning, Laura texted me for the first time since she'd left. "Looking forward to our talk on Friday. Been doing a lot of thinking. Hope you have too." I didn't respond. Instead, I gave Weiss the green light. At precisely 2 p.m., when Laura would be at the gallery preparing for an evening showing of, surprise, Marcus Reed's newest works, Weiss's team sprang into action. Divorce papers were delivered to the gallery by courier, with copies sent to her lawyer. Simultaneously, our joint accounts were frozen, her access to my personal accounts was revoked, and notifications were sent to our investment managers requiring dual authorization for any transactions. But the masterstroke was what happened at 2:05 p.m. Every major client of Laura's gallery, along with key figures in the art world, received an email from an anonymous account. The email contained no accusations, just documentation. Side-by-side comparisons of what certain artworks had been purchased for versus what they were being sold for, discrepancies in provenance documentation, and a particularly damning trail of cash purchases and offshore transfers. The email ended with a simple statement: "Due diligence matters in art investments. Verify independently." At 2:17 p.m., my phone exploded with the notifications. Laura was calling, texting, emailing, a barrage of increasingly frantic messages. "What the hell are you doing? Call me right now. You don't understand what you've done. David, please, we need to talk." I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I sat in Weiss's office, watching the plan unfold on his multiple computer screens. Laura's social media accounts, which had been so active documenting her creative connection with Marcus, went suddenly silent. The gallery's website briefly went down, then reappeared with a notice about temporary closure for inventory assessment. At 4:38 p.m., Laura showed up at Weiss's office, eyes wild, demanding to see me. The receptionist, following our protocol, informed her that I was unavailable and that all communications should go through respective counsel. "Tell him I know what he did," Laura hissed, loud enough for us to hear through the closed-circuit video. "Tell him he's making a terrible mistake." After she left, Weiss turned to me. "Are you sure you want to continue with this approach? There's still room for a less public resolution." I shook my head. She chose the public route when she started flaunting her affair on social media. Tagged me in it even. She wanted an audience for our marriage's demise. Weiss nodded, a glimmer of respect in his eyes. "Very well. Phase 2 begins tomorrow." Phase 2 was even more precisely targeted. Letters were sent to the IRS and relevant state tax authorities outlining specific concerns about the gallery's financial practices, with careful wording to make clear that I was coming forward voluntarily to disassociate myself from any potential improprieties. Similar information was provided to the Banking Commission regarding the cash transactions that exceeded reporting thresholds. None of this named Laura explicitly as committing fraud. That would be for the authorities to determine. But it created a paper trail showing that I had become aware of concerning patterns and had taken appropriate steps to report them. By day 14, the day Laura and I were supposed to reunite and discuss our marriage, the gallery was closed indefinitely. Marcus Reed had mysteriously disappeared from social media, and 3 separate regulatory agencies had opened inquiries into the financial dealings surrounding certain art transactions. Laura, meanwhile, had gone from angry demands to desperate pleas. "David, please, just talk to me. We can fix this. Whatever you think I did, you're wrong. I can explain everything. This isn't just hurting me, it's hurting you too. Your name is on those accounts." That last one made me smile grimly. Weiss had anticipated that angle and had documentation ready showing that my signatures on many documents had subtle inconsistencies suggesting they might not be authentic. Not enough to prove forgery, but enough to create reasonable doubt about my knowledge and participation. Then came the text that confirmed I'd made the right decision. "You have no idea who you're messing with. T isn't someone you want as an enemy. Back off now or you'll regret it." I showed it to Weiss, who immediately called his security consultant. By that evening, I had a new hotel room under yet another name and a private security detail watching my movements. We also accelerated our timeline for the final confrontation. On the morning of day 15, I finally responded to Laura with a single text. "The Drake Hotel, room 1217, 1 p." The Drake was neutral territory, a luxury hotel downtown where we'd spent our first anniversary. Room 1217 was a suite Weiss had arranged, with security cameras, with Laura's knowledge and consent required by law, and a panic button if things got out of hand. Weiss himself would be in the adjacent room, monitoring. At precisely 1 p.m., there was a knock on the suite door. I opened it to find Laura, almost unrecognizable from the confident woman who had walked out 2 weeks earlier. Her hair was pulled back severely, her face pale and drawn, her designer outfit replaced by a simple black dress that looked like funeral attire. "David," she said, her voice breaking, "thank you for seeing me." I stepped aside to let her in, but didn't offer any greeting. The suite was impersonal, all traces of my temporary residence there removed. Just a sitting area with 2 chairs facing each other, a small table between them with a folder and a bottle of water. Laura stood awkwardly in the center of the room, clearly thrown by my silence and the formal setup. "Should I sit?" she finally asked. I gestured to one of the chairs and took the other. Laura perched on the edge of her seat, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "David, I don't know what you think you know, but this has gone too far. You're destroying everything we built." "We?" I raised an eyebrow. I wasn't aware we were building a financial scheme disguised as an art gallery. She flinched. "That's not what it is. The art world operates differently than what you're used to. There are conventions, practices that might seem unusual from the outside." "Save it," I cut her off. "I've spent the last 2 weeks with forensic accountants who specialize in art market transactions. The conventions you're talking about are the difference between creative tax avoidance and criminal tax evasion. You crossed that line about 3 years ago." Laura's face hardened. "So that's your game? Threaten me with tax problems unless I give you what you want in the divorce? That's low, David, even for someone as rigid as you." I almost laughed. "You still don't get it. This isn't a negotiation. The divorce terms are already set." I slid the folder across the table to her. "Everything's laid out there. You keep your gallery, what's left of it. You keep the condo. I keep the house and my personal accounts. We split the legitimate joint investments, 50-50, clean break." She didn't touch the folder. "And if I don't agree, then things get very public and very legal." The documentation has already been provided to the relevant authorities. Right now, it's positioned as me coming forward after discovering irregularities. If you fight this, the narrative changes to you attempting to frame me for your financial crimes. Laura's face went from pale to ashen. "You wouldn't. 2 weeks ago, I would have agreed with you. I would have done anything to save our marriage." But then you decided to test it by flaunting your affair with Marcus Reed for the world to see. You tagged me in those posts, Laura. You wanted me to know. You wanted me to hurt. It wasn't like that, she protested, but her eyes couldn't meet mine. No? What was it like then? Explain it to me. Explain how suggesting a separation with no rules and then immediately going public with another man was supposed to help our marriage. Laura's composure cracked. You were never there, always on that damn rig or thinking about the rig when you were home. Do you know what it's like to be married to someone who's physically present but mentally gone? Marcus actually sees me, appreciates my mind, my vision, appreciates your ability to launder his inflated art sales, you mean? She stood up abruptly. This isn't about the money. What we have is real. Had, I corrected. Past tense. The gallery's finished, Laura. Even if you avoid criminal charges, your reputation in the art world is shot. No serious collector will touch anything connected to you now. Because of you, she spat. You did this. I remained seated, calm. No, you did this. I just exposed it. There's a difference. Yes, Laura paced the room, running her hands through her hair. You don't understand what you've done. There are people involved in this who won't just walk away. Powerful people. If you're talking about Tessa Blackwood, we already know all about her involvement. Laura froze. What are you talking about? Your mysterious T, the one who's been bankrolling this whole operation. The one who's been using your gallery to move money around the system. How did you? You're not the only one who can conduct an investigation, Laura. The difference is mine was legal. Her expression suddenly changed, a calculating look replacing the anger. What about T? Did your investigation tell you what she's capable of? I kept my face neutral, though internally I was on high alert. Should I care? Laura laughed, a hollow sound. Oh, David, you have no idea what you've stumbled into. T isn't just some investor or collector. T makes things disappear. People disappear. Are you threatening me, Laura? I'm warning you, because despite everything, I don't want to see you hurt. Just sign these, Ushbone. She pulled a set of papers from her purse and placed them on the table. Counter proposal. You walk away from everything, the house, the accounts, all of it. In exchange, you get to live your life without looking over your shoulder. I didn't even glance at the papers. No. David, please. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're trying to scare me because you're out of options. But here's what you don't get, Laura. I've spent my career calculating risk factors for catastrophic events. I know when a threat is real versus when it's a bluff. This isn't a bluff. Then I guess I'll have to take my chances. I stood up. We're done here. You have 24 hours to sign the original agreement or the full documentation goes public. Not just to the authorities, but to every news outlet covering the art world. Laura stared at me, her face a mixture of disbelief and fear. You'd risk your life for what? Pride. Not pride, principle. And if this mysterious T is as dangerous as you say, maybe you should be more worried about yourself. After all, you're the one who failed. As she gathered her things to leave, Laura paused at the door. You know what the sad part is? I really did love you once. No, Laura, you loved what I provided. Stability, money, legitimacy. You never loved me. After she left, Weiss came in from the adjacent room. Well, he said, that was illuminating, especially the part about this T person. You think it's real? I think we need to take it seriously. I'm calling in some additional security measures for you, and we'll expedite everything. If she's desperate enough to make threats, she might be desperate enough to try something else. That night, I couldn't sleep. Laura's warning kept replaying in my mind. Was there really someone dangerous behind their operation? Or was it just another manipulation, a last-ditch effort to scare me into backing down? I was still pondering this at 3 a.m. when my phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Smart move, rejecting her offer. Reed and wife leaving country tonight. Private airfield, bringing documentation. 5 a.m. Come alone or not at all. I immediately called Weiss, who answered groggily but snapped to attention when I read him the message. It's a trap, he said immediately. Don't even think about it. What if it's not? What if Reed is trying to save himself by giving us evidence on this T person? Then he can provide it through proper channels. This has all the hallmarks of an ambush. I knew Weiss was right, but something about the message nagged at me. Wife. The text had said Reed and wife. As far as I knew, Marcus wasn't married. Unless... I need to make a call, I told Weiss. I'll get back to you. I hung up and called the cybersecurity expert who had analyzed the gallery's server. After explaining what I needed, he quickly found what I was looking for. Evidence of a secret ceremony in Bali last year where Marcus and Laura had gotten married, while she was still legally married to me. I called Weiss back with this information. So the text isn't about Laura at all, Weiss concluded. It's about Marcus and Tessa Blackwood. Exactly, which means Laura doesn't know about this message. Someone else is trying to give us information. It's still too risky for you to go alone. I'm calling in a security team. There's no time, but I have another idea. An hour later, I was parked a safe distance from the small private airfield mentioned in the text, watching through high-powered binoculars. I wasn't alone. Weiss had insisted on coming personally, along with his head of security, a former Special Forces operator named Reeves. We had also anonymously tipped off local law enforcement about potential suspicious activity at the airfield. At 4:45 a.m., a black SUV pulled up to a small private jet that was being prepped for departure. Two figures emerged, a man who was clearly Marcus Reed and a woman who definitely wasn't Laura. This woman was shorter, darker-haired, moving with the confident stride of someone used to getting her way. Reeves, who was manning the high-resolution camera we'd brought, whistled softly. Well, well, that's Tessa Blackwood. Who? I asked. Tessa Blackwood. Old money, very old money. Her family has banking interests across Europe and Asia, been rumored for years to be involved in less than legal financial activities, but no one's ever been able to make anything stick. Weiss and I said simultaneously. We watched as Marcus and Tessa supervised the loading of several large cases onto the plane. Not suitcases, hard transport cases, the kind used for valuable or fragile items. The artwork, I guessed. They're taking it all with them. And leaving Laura to face the music, Weiss added. Reeves's phone buzzed. Local police are 2 minutes out. Do we want to approach before they arrive? Weiss looked at me. Your call. This is your chance to confront them, get answers. I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. No, let the authorities handle it. I have what I need, which is confirmation that Laura was just another pawn in their game, a useful one, but ultimately disposable. As we watched, a police cruiser's lights appeared in the distance. Marcus and Tessa noticed too, their body language suddenly tense. They had a hurried conversation. Then Marcus started back toward the SUV while Tessa boarded the plane. They're splitting up, Reeves observed. But before Marcus could reach the SUV, 2 more police cars appeared, blocking the exit route. We were too far away to hear what was said, but the result was clear. Marcus Reed was being detained, hands on the hood of his vehicle, while officers approached the plane. And that, Weiss said with satisfaction, is the end of that. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of police interviews, evidence handovers, and legal maneuvering. Marcus Reed and Tessa Blackwood were taken into custody on suspicion of multiple financial crimes, including tax evasion, money laundering, and fraud. The artwork in those transport cases turned out to be both original pieces and high-quality forgeries, part of an elaborate scheme to create artificial provenance and inflate values. Laura, meanwhile, had been arrested at her condo while apparently preparing for her own hasty departure. According to the detective who interviewed me, she had been extremely cooperative, immediately offering to provide evidence against Reed and Blackwood in exchange for leniency. She claims she was manipulated, the detective told me, says she only realized the extent of their operation recently. And you believe her? I asked. The detective shrugged. Not my job to believe or disbelieve. That's for the courts to decide. True to my prediction, Laura's lawyer delivered the signed divorce papers exactly 47 hours after our meeting. No changes, no contested points, just her signature acknowledging the end of our marriage on my terms. There was a note attached in Laura's distinctive handwriting. I hope it was worth it. I folded the note and placed it in the shredder without response. It wasn't about worth. It wasn't even about revenge, not really. It was about refusing to be played, refusing to be the safety net while she tested her new wings. 3 weeks later, the gallery's closure was official. The art world buzzed with rumors about financial irregularities and questionable provenance of certain works. Marcus Reed and Tessa Blackwood were facing multiple federal charges, while Laura had secured a plea deal in exchange for her testimony. Laura had moved to Miami, according to mutual friends who felt obligated to keep me updated. Starting over, they said, with family money supporting her until she could establish herself in a new market. No mention of whether she would try the gallery business again, or if she had learned her lesson about mixing business with romance. As for me, I returned to the rig with a newfound focus and clarity. The safety systems I'd been developing were implemented ahead of schedule, earning commendations from company leadership and industry regulators alike. I bought a smaller house closer to the coast, adopted a rescue dog named Tank, and started taking sailing lessons on my weeks off. My marriage had failed catastrophically, but unlike the systems I safeguard at work, this was one failure I could walk away from, scathed but ultimately intact. Laura proposed a 2-week separation to test our marriage. By day 2, she'd shown me exactly what I needed to see, and unlike the systems I safeguard at work, this was one failure I could walk away from, scathed but ultimately intact. Some people might call what I did revenge. I call it self-preservation. The game wasn't worth playing anymore, so I changed the rules and ended it before she could blink. And sometimes when I'm on my boat with Tank at my side, watching the sunset over the water, I realize that the separation did exactly what Laura claimed it would. It showed us both who we really were.